As a moviegoer in 1960, you would have likely seen Psycho, The Magnificent Seven, or Spartacus, but hidden in between the other movie titles was a little B movie called The Little Shop of Horrors. Directed by Roger Corman, the movie was shot in only 2 days and a night on leftover sets from his previous film, A Bucket of Blood. With such a tight schedule and a shoestring budget of around $25,000, Corman either was trying to challenge himself or was trying to win a bet, but one thing seems to stay consistent in all of his interviews: it was filmed almost as a joke. Well, this little joke of a film went out with little more than a sizzle. Corman was disappointed, and he said, "A movie that strange and weird should have either been a hit or a flat-out failure." The movie was doomed to be forgotten, except for the intervention of one man, Howard Ashman. Ashman saw potential where no one else could. He wanted to take the story and transform it into a stage musical. His family doubted him, his agent doubted him, but what resulted was an off-Broadway smash that would lead to a film adaptation with a budget of around $30 million, or over 1,000 times the budget of the original Little Shop movie. This is the tale of how Little Shop of Horrors went from screen to the stage and back again. Regardless if this is your first time seeing me or you're a returning viewer, welcome to Movie Musical Mania, the channel devoted to sharing a slice of musical cinema with the world. Please subscribe so we can learn together. Let's get into Little Shop's journey from screen to stage and back to screen again. Howard Ashman was only a teenager when he saw The Little Shop of Horrors on television. This would inspire one of the first musicals he wrote as a teenager, called The Candy Shop, which he later called a subconscious ripoff of Little Shop of Horrors. The film would continue to linger in the back of his mind as he began his career as a playwright. His early works, 'Cause Maggie's Afraid of the Dark, The Confirmation, and Dream Stuff, were all mixed review flops. According to the Howard Ashman website, it was on Dream Stuff, a musical for which he wrote the book, that he found he was interested in writing both the lyrics and the book of a musical. In 1977, he became the artistic director of the WA Theater in New York, a small theater company that staged neglected as well as new works. After meeting Alan Menken, the two began writing their first musical together, God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. It closed after only a few performances, but the beginning of an important collaboration between two musical geniuses was formed. Their next collaboration would take inspiration from that little cult film that had stayed with Ashman since his youth. Jonas Westover writes in Little Shop of Horrors, breaking the rules all the way to the big, enormous 12-inch screen, that Charles Griffith, the screenwriter for Little Shop of Horrors, may have purposefully or accidentally based the story on Green Thoughts, a 1931 short story written for Harper's Magazine. But the man-eating plant was a trope in fiction regardless, and it was this element of a non-human character in a musical that intrigued Ashman. Remember, this was when Miss Piggy and Kermit were in their heyday, he said. He appreciated the way it leaned into satire. Rocky Horror Picture Show was the most prominent predecessor, of course, but that was camp, and Ashman wanted the satire of Little Shop to maintain a sincerity. Ashman and Menken recognized that theater of the 1970s and 80s were exploring unusual sources and post-apocalyptic themes, but often they strayed from a central core. Ashman wanted his show to stay heartfelt. Ashman and Menken struck a deal with Corman for royalties, who was not anticipating any future success for the movie. They began writing slowly, testing song styles and plot outlines. It was an off and on process. His agent tried to talk him out of it. His family tried to talk him out of it. Howard's sister, Sarah Ashman Gillespie, shared how her brother was trying to get other people excited in the project. We rented a Betamax tape and screened the movie. Howard, my husband and I, some friends, and Howard's agent, Esther Sherman, gathered around the television and, all but one of us, shuddered. But the creative team felt that Little Shop lent itself very well to the stage, especially since nearly all of the film took place inside of the plant shop. But several things would have to change. The narration of a cop at the beginning of the movie now becomes the voice of God. The location was moved from Los Angeles to New York, specifically the Lower East Side. The dentist's role was expanded. He was put into a relationship with Audrey, and the characters like Seymour's mom were cut. The comic voice of the puppet in the movie was returned into a deeper, menacing voice for the musical. Ron Taylor provided this voice from a box backstage. Perhaps the most important changes to the material are the central themes and how they're treated. In the musical, the Faustian bargain is put front and center. Seymour kills people specifically to be fed to the plant, driven by his love for Audrey and a desire for money. And it is this desire for money by all people that, in the end, leads to the takeover of Audrey II's. In the 1960 film, all deaths are strictly accidental, and the themes of consumerism and romance are much less prominent, so the emotional and dramatic weight of Seymour's actions are significantly less powerful. Ashman asked Jim Henson's team to design a puppet, but they declined. Martin P. Johnson, the puppeteer of Mr. Snuffleupagus, agreed and designed 4 puppets to use throughout the show. The show opened on May 6, 1982 at the WPA Theater on a budget of around $2,000, and it closed on June 6th, 1 month later. But not because the show was a flop, because the theater couldn't cope with the high demand.
It spanned the spectrum of all ages.
We liked it so much that we brought our whole family this time.
I liked it a whole lot.
The Little Shop of Horrors is the greatest play in the universe.
It's better than Gremlins, better than E.T.
It was one of the most delightful and enjoyable plays I've seen in a very long time.
The score, composed by Menken in the style of early 1960s rock and roll, doo-wop, and early Motown, was particularly enjoyed by audiences. A review in the New York Times wrote that this unique gamble paid off. Admittedly, this is a rather rarefied idea for a musical comedy, but the evening is as entertaining as it is exotic. It is a show for horticulturists, horror cultists, sci-fi fans, and anyone with a taste for the outrageous. The show was such a smash, it would be restaged at a larger venue, the Orpheum Theater, and would cost $350,000 with new puppets. It was around this time that 2 important visionaries were introduced to the show, David Geffen and Cameron Mackintosh, both of whom would be vital in the future success of the show. They would handle the transfer to the Orpheum. Lee Wilkoff and Ellen Greene took the roles of Seymour and Audrey, but according to Ashman's audition papers, Faith Prince was the lead choice for Audrey, and Nathan Lane was a contender for Seymour. Faith Prince had to turn down the role due to contractual commitments. The show was an off-Broadway smash and stayed for 5 years. It closed on November 1st, 1987, after 2,209 performances. Such a successful stage show would inevitably be transferred to Broadway, right? Well, Ashman turned down offers. He felt that large venues were not fit for the novelty of the show, and Ashman knew that heartfelt honesty is what made the tongue-in-cheek script work. Consider Audrey's sweet ballad Somewhere That's Green, that has comical lyrics, but we feel for her, or the sincere Suddenly Seymour. If the show went to Broadway, the creators feared that it might lose its heart and soul. But off-Broadway was not the end of Little Shop's story. According to a personal letter of Ashman's, as early as July of 1983, he was considering a film adaptation of the musical. Steven Spielberg and Martin Scorsese were both in talks to direct, but Ashman was not keen on rushing a movie because it was so successful on the stage. Ashman also felt that film musicals didn't really work as well as stage shows.
There's a big problem with music and film. In live action, music and live action film. The only truth I know about it is it usually doesn't work. Music may have more license in the animated film in the same way that it does in the theater, simply because the level of reality is different. There's no game being played by a theater audience. We know that's happening right in front of us, and it's painted scenery and it's not real. When we go to the movies, it's a real street, or it looks a lot more like a real street. And we pretend it may be really happening.
David Geffen, who had been part of the deal to bring the musical to the Orpheum, had become involved in the movie industry, with his first project being Risky Business. Of all potential collaborators, Howard Ashman felt like he was the only one taking the project seriously. Geffen agreed to produce the film adaptation, and Ashman would write the screenplay. They found their director in Frank Oz, who had directed Muppets Take Manhattan, and was experienced with puppets. Oz requested that they shoot the film in England because it would save them money. Shooting would indeed commence in October of 1985 at Pinewood Studios on the 007 lot. Oz chose to shoot completely in the studio since he felt that a studio set was intimate, offered a sense of heightened reality, and was traditional for Hollywood musicals. It turned out to be very cold in this studio. Look at the actors rehearsing Suddenly Seymour. They're in winter coats. Oz also made the casting choices. He considered Cyndi Lauper, and, according to David Geffen, Warner Brothers wanted Barbra Streisand for Audrey, but Oz stuck with Ellen Greene. He felt that Ellen had a special quality, and she indeed had transformed the character into something endearing and unique out of the original 1960 Audrey. Rick Moranis, off of his success from Ghostbusters, was chosen as Seymour. Comedians Steve Martin, John Candy, and Bill Murray helped create buzz around the picture. Levi Stubbs of the Four Tops voiced Audrey II. Just as the material had been adjusted for the stage, Ashman adjusted the musical for the screen. The film retained many B-movie elements, so it wasn't a completely glossed-over Hollywood production, and Oz recognized that it was a comedy first and foremost, therefore restricting the runtime to an hour and a half.
Just because you put a strange and interesting plant in the window, people don't suddenly...
Excuse me, I couldn't help noticing that strange and interesting plant. What is it?
The sincerity and heart of the characters of the stage show was, thankfully, retained for the screen. While the plot and the characterizations remained largely untouched, the musical score was significantly altered. In the final cut, 7 songs were dropped, 1 was mostly dropped, 1 was rewritten, and 1 was written specifically for the screen. You Never Know became Some Fun Now. Closed for renovations, Mushnick and Son, Sudden Changes, Now It's Just the Gas, Act 1 Finale, and Call Back in the Morning were cut from the screenplay. The Meek Shall Inherit and finale were both filmed but inevitably cut, although the beginning and the end of The Meek Shall Inherit remains in the theatrical release. Mean Green Mother from Outer Space was a new song written for the film and gave Menken and Ashman their first Oscar nomination. Menken and Ashman penned multiple songs for this moment, but this is the one that was chosen. This song serves as the climax, a musical moment absent from the stage show. It shows Seymour, desperate to kill the creature he nourished, in a final showdown. It is here that the puppeteers got to show off their prowess, as the plant uses more movement than it uses in the whole film, with a chorus of buds that support Audrey II's song. It is a violent, climactic moment that Oz requested specifically. And, by the way, the puppet got a significant upgrade from the stage show. Instead of being manned by 1 or 2 people, it was manned by a whole team of 50. Lyle Conway, a friend from the Jim Henson Company, was brought on to create Audrey II in all of her various stages of growth. Instead of 4 versions of Audrey, there were 7. 15,000 handmade leaves, 2,000 feet of vine, and 11.5 miles of cable were used to create the monster. To make Audrey II really come alive, the plant lip-synced at a slower rate and it was sped up. Jonas Westover writes in Little Shop of Horrors, breaking the rules all the way to the big, enormous 12-inch screen, that the plant sang at 12 frames a second, the rest was filmed at 24 frames a second, and when Seymour was on the screen with Audrey, it was filmed at 16 frames a second.
Thanks mostly to Frank and to all the people working in that department, the plant has taken on the characteristics of a human, and I feel sometimes when I'm working with the plant that I'm working with a really ugly guy. As the character, treating him like a character makes me almost forget sometimes that it is an inanimate object, because he's so animated at the time that I'm working with him. When the take is over, I just kind of go, oh, you got it, and I walk away and go and get a scone or something, but the plant just kind of, it hangs there because 50 guys go away and, you know, have a tea break.
Once filming had wrapped, it was time for audience reactions. When the movie was screened in San Jose and then Los Angeles, it scored 15% on the important question, would you recommend this movie to your friends? The studio demanded reshoots to change the ending for a more upbeat one. Don Shoei wrote in an article in the New York Times that David Geffen was afraid this might happen. During pre-production, Geffen had warned Ashman about an issue that had happened at the ending of Risky Business. In the original cut, Joel, played by Tom Cruise, didn't get into college or get the girl at the end. Audience reception was low, so they changed the ending so that he got into college, and in response to the would you recommend this movie question, audiences gave it 70%. Geffen felt that having Seymour and Audrey die at the end would make audiences hate the film, and it turns out he was right. With not much of a choice, the team returned to England and shot for 2 more weeks. Now, in the theatrical cut, Seymour electrocutes the plant and takes Audrey to her dream house from somewhere that's green, but an Audrey II bud waits patiently, leaving the ending slightly ambiguous. The original filmed ending followed the stage play. Audrey was injured and fed to the plant, Seymour was buried in the walls and then eaten, only his glasses left behind. Then a montage of the plant destroying and taking over America. The ending alone cost nearly 1/5 of the budget of the film, and about a year of filming for Conway's unit. It added over 7 minutes to the movie. The final image was of the plant bursting through the movie screen, which was a spin of the final novelty of the stage show at the Orpheum. At the last note, vines would fall into the theater and provide a final jump scare. With the new happy ending, I feel that a lot of the moral lesson gets lost, especially the movie's comments on consumerism, since the new ending seems to celebrate Audrey's suburban dream. I mean, yay Seymour, enjoy that new house, but remember you paid for it with blood. The ending was not the only change made after the screening. Seymour's proposal scene was reshot, this time to include the fact that Seymour had a big check coming the next day, and the important question,
suppose there'd never been an Audrey 2, you know, and I was like a nothing again, a nobody. Would you still like me?
Was moved to after Audrey had been injured by the plant.
Do you really think I liked you because of that?
The Meek shall inherit middle sequence was cut, which I find to be a shame since this section of the song explained how Seymour didn't want to kill the plant because he feared Audrey might not love him without his fame. Other changes included a different voice doing the narration in the beginning, the sequence of Seymour chopping up Orrin was trimmed down, Audrey's line,
"You don't make nice voice when you live on Skid Row, Mr. Mushnick,"
made the cutting room floor, and a brief part of Some Fun Now was cut. Ashman disliked the new ending, but understood that it was important for the film's success. The movie was released on the 19th of December 1986. According to thenumbers.com, on a budget of $30 million, it made nearly $39 million, a small but decent profit. As many know, Ashman and Menken would go on to start the Disney musical renaissance with 1989's The Little Mermaid, which is perhaps their crowning achievement. But bringing a little-known plant back out into the sunlight wasn't a small feat. Howard Ashman had defied the odds. He had seen potential where no one else had, and he had created an off-Broadway smash, which garnered a film adaptation without transferring to Broadway. Thank you for watching. This is Movie Musical Mania. Please like and subscribe for more content like this.